Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today on the channel we're going to be doing a quick list video. That's right, we're looking at 5 great Team Marvel Comics Omnibus editions. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but honestly, I can't wait to talk about this. I just recently recorded the same video for DC Omnibuses, so I knew Marvel would shortly follow. But before I dive into these great Marvel team books, let's go ahead and shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can actually find a link to it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so very much for considering. Now let's get started with these Marvel books. First up, in no particular order, we're going to be looking at the Astonishing X-Men Omnibus by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday. For me, this is a quintessential X-Men team run. This is one of my favorite X-Men runs of all time, and incidentally, one of the earliest I ever had the pleasure of reading. I've often said that I think that X-Men is one of the most notoriously hard to break into superhero franchises. If you're looking to start reading an X-Men comic, you sometimes have to find these specific entry points because their lore can often be so just dense. I think that between all of the X-Men books, all the X-Men spin-off books, their long and just prestigious literary history here, it can just candidly be a little bit hard to get your foot in the door of this series, at least in my mind. So someone recommended this series as kind of a jumping on point, a good read, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really fun run. Why I like this book, other than it being really accessible as I just brought up, is I love the artwork from John Cassaday. His artwork is so vivid, detailed, all the character models look very distinctive. I think the coloring as well just pops right off the page. There is a kind of realism to a lot of his characters that I also really enjoy. Honestly, this and his work over at Wildstorm/DC Planetary, I can highly recommend. His art in both books are just outstanding. The team itself in this book is also really fun for me. It has Wolverine, it has Cyclops, Beast, Colossus, Emma Frost, Kitty Pryde, just to name a few. But we have maybe 2 to 4 main story arcs across this entire run. I think the run itself is somewhere between 20 to 30 issues. It's not an over-long series, just some tight kind of blockbuster-like storylines, which I enjoyed. Honestly, if they ever wanted to directly adapt the material in this book, I think that they could do a fantastic job, and I think it would be pretty commercially successful. It's the comic book equivalent to kind of a good popcorn movie I'd see in the summer. That's what it feels like to me, and I mean that in the most complimentary sense. Like I said, it's really accessible, and it just personally has some of my favorite X-Men. I've always loved Wolverine. I've come to really enjoy Kitty Pryde as well. Cyclops is definitely a mainstay, and honestly, Emma Frost adds so much character to any X-Men roster she is on. I know she got kind of popularized in the X-Men with the run preceding this, the New X-Men by Grant Morrison, which was also fantastic. But yeah, this is a team book that just really works for me. I think it's really grounded. I think it's really easy to enjoy, understand, and be just thoroughly entertained by. And the art on every page, it's just absolutely immersive. I highly recommend this book. I know it is currently, at the time of this recording, out of print. This is a reprint that came out a couple years ago, but if they reprinted it once, hopefully they'll reprint it again for all of those looking to pick up a copy. Until then, you can find them in paperbacks, Ultimate Collections, or this omnibus in some of the secondary markets. Don't miss out on Astonishing X-Men. Next on the list is a recently reading section here. This is Fantastic Four by Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo. Omnibus. This contains the entire run by these 2 incredible creators. This was kind of an omnibus comic collecting whale for me personally. This was one of my biggest collecting goals and one of my most anticipated books of the year. So this is of course the Fantastic Four, and we have it written by the incredible Mark Waid, who's already written so many other great works that I enjoy. His Daredevil run in particular is one of my favorite Daredevil runs. But yeah, his work here at Fantastic Four is a great entry point for new readers as well. The art from Mike Wieringo is animated, kind of cartoony, so just full of life. And yet the actual plot lines and storytelling are oftentimes so dark and brutal that the kind of complement and juxtaposition of the storyline to this art style, it's just a really, really striking pop in my mind. The team here is also what I want to focus on. This is Marvel's first family. You know, so many of them are related, and in the case of Ben Grimm, he might as well be related as part of the family. And this whole team setup just really works. And I think that this whole run is so character driven from what I've seen, and I just really adore it. While I think it is so accessible to new readers, I think longer term fans as well will really enjoy where some of these characters go across this book. It has one of the most terrifying Doctor Doom stories I've ever read, and just some really, really fun character growth for all of our favorite foursome here. The characters to me feel really like a family in this book, which is how you make a strong Fantastic Four book in my mind. I also saw it, I think, on one of the blurbs on the front or back cover of this collection, but I couldn't agree with it more. What Stan Lee and Jack Kirby began in the 60s, what John Byrne kind of revitalized in his run, I think in the 80s or whenever he was writing on it, Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo have done here in this run in the early 2000s. I think it's just a re-establishment of what makes this family incredible, and it's just done in such a spectacular way. I may personally always prefer the Jonathan Hickman Fantastic Four run, but there's something that Mark Waid and Michael Wieringo understand about these characters that I think is almost unrivaled. I'm really impressed by it, and I think it is just a near perfect example of a great team book. I also wanted to include it on this list as well because at the time of this recording, this is still on sale. You can still find this from most major comic book retailers, like the channel sponsor Organic Price Books, so if you're hoping to pick up this book before it goes out of print again, now might be your chance. Gotta check out Fantastic Four by Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo. And hey, if you're enjoying this list video and you like things like comic book reviews, unboxings, and more, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I'm always doing videos like this, and frankly, would love to have you aboard. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's keep this list going. And speaking of Jonathan Hickman, the next team book we're going to be talking about is Avengers by Jonathan Hickman. This is the Omnibus, Volume 1 of a 2-volume set. This is the incredible Hick-Vengers, as sometimes people call it here, and honestly, this is a trip. So Jonathan Hickman's tenure at Marvel has some ongoing plot threads that ultimately culminate in his kind of magnum opus with Secret Wars, and this is the Avengers run that leads directly to the door of that Secret Wars event. His Avengers run all starts here, and it is just really eye-opening. I think one of my favorite earmarks of any Jonathan Hickman series I've read is the way he can balance these kind of epic scale and cerebral storylines in such a really coherent and just wonderfully entertaining way, and that's definitely the case here with Avengers. One of the things he does is establish some new villains, some new threats, but he also pulls together a really unusual team dynamic in this book that I haven't often seen replicated in a mainstream superhero title. What he does is he doesn't just give us that main Avengers roster, he gives us an explosively huge roster of Avengers, and any given issue or story arc will just kind of pull a team from this giant roster. Because of that, we don't have like the 6 or 7 mainstay Avengers that we follow for the whole run. No, issue to issue or story arc to story arc, we might have a handful of Avengers. The next one will shuffle to a whole different group, or we'll have 1 or 2 from the previous story in a whole new batch, things like that. And because of that, this team always feels very fresh. I also liked it because we got to explore so many more characters, so many differing character dynamics, that everything just served to push the storytelling further, but we got to just see such a wide array of characters. And yes, they're all organized and unified under that shared Avengers team banner, but there's so much more than that going on in the pages of this book, and I really think in that way it's such a unique team book. It's really set apart. It's unlike something like the Fantastic Four, where you have those main 4 characters and it's pretty much always that team, you know, barring 1 or 2 substitutions here or there. No, with this run here on Avengers, we just have a gigantic roster of heroes. I'm talking 20, 30 characters, probably minimum, and it'll pull just from this group, and I just think it's really just entertaining. It's so interesting. And honestly, reading it through my first time, I don't know who they're going to pull from next. And that's part of the excitement. That's part of the engagement for this book for me. And it's been so much fun. The art as well through the collection is just incredible. We have so many different artists attached to this book, like Opena and Epting, who are some of my favorite comic book illustrators. And honestly, it's just wonderful. It's so good. I do think it's fairly accessible to newer readers. There's definitely a lot to chew on in this collection, but I think someone just starting to break into the Marvel Universe, you get pretty good introductions to a lot of the characters. And for myself, who considers himself a pretty big Marvel fan, there's still been a character or two on this team that I had to Wikipedia or look up because I just wasn't overly familiar with. But honestly, Hickman kind of gives you what you need to understand the narrative and to just get locked into the characters and where they're going for his epic. Don't miss out on Jonathan Hickman's Avengers. Okay, the next omnibus we're going to be talking about today is X Factor by Peter David Omnibus Volume 1. Yes, this is the next team book we're going to be looking at today, and this is honestly an underrated gem for me. I know a lot of people have talked about this book. Most recently, I just saw Tyler over at Illuminati talking about this book in something. Honestly, if you haven't seen Tyler's channel, I highly recommend it. Great stuff, great guy. But yes, this is the 90s run of X Factor by Peter David. Why I want to clarify that is because he came back to the title in the early 2000s, around the time of House of M, to write X Factor again. This is sometimes known as the X Factor Investigations era, and that's actually currently being collected in omnibus format. They've released Volume 2, which is the start of that early 2000s run, and the Volume 3, and I believe they've solicited a Volume 4 for, I think, spring of next year, if I'm not mistaken, 2025. At any rate, this is the Volume 1. I do think you can just start with the Volume 2 if you're looking for that more contemporary series, but honestly, this one is a real gem for me. I did a full review on this book a while back, but one of the things this book did for me was it really opened my eyes to just how great some 90s comics could be. Yes, it did have some edge, it had some over-muscled, just action-y kind of moments and characters, which I know can be earmarks of this decade of comics, but it was so much more than that. It had so much rich characterization, it had some real heart, and some really delightful humor that only Peter David could bring. The art as well throughout this collection is absolutely striking. We have some almost manga-looking character models. Like, I saw some renditions of Polaris in this that are just beautiful and eye-popping, and so, I think, kind of unique for Western comics, especially at the time. I was just so absorbed into this run. While I do think it is helpful to have a foundational understanding of the Marvel Universe, I also thought this book was so accessible to new readers. There were some mutant characters in this book I had never read before, but I was easy to just kind of get to know them within the run of this book itself. This is an X-Team book. This is obviously X Factor. At the time, they're kind of government regulated, but what they're supposed to be doing on paper and what they actually do are very different. Won't get into that too much here. The team is headed largely by Cyclops' brother, Havoc. We have Polaris on the team. We have Strong Guy. We have Quicksilver, we have Wolfsbane, and so many more. We have the Multiple Man, Madrox. But yeah, it's a really fantastic run with a really eclectic and interesting group of mutant characters. So if you're looking for a mutant-related omnibus or team, or just generally a team book you maybe haven't heard of or haven't delved into, this is one I can highly recommend. It was so much fun, and honestly, it had me just reevaluating this whole era of comic books. Honestly, a really spectacular book here. And last but certainly not least, we're going to be looking at Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force Omnibus. Yes, this omnibus collects the entirety of Remender's run on this book. For those that don't know, X-Force is largely the kind of Black Ops, Special Ops wing of the X-Men. It's not uncommon for X-Force to get their hands a bit dirty, for the missions to be a little more bloody or requiring of lethal force, so it is a more explicit branch of kind of an X-Men team. and that's certainly what we have here in the pages of Remender's book. I really love this book so far. This was actually my most anticipated book of this year, 2024. I've heard resoundingly positive things about this run, and I'm about to gush forth with a lot of the same. This is actually my nightly reader. I've been making my way through this, and I can't wait to do the full review on the channel in the coming weeks. This team is led by Wolverine and has on its roster Phantom X, Psylocke, Archangel, Deadpool, and more. The book is largely organized into these story arcs that kind of are missions, more or less, but the stories lead so well into the next that it all kind of just blurs together seamlessly in a really wonderful way. The team is excitingly eclectic, but they all have that kind of darker edge. They're all more fearsome, brutal kinds of characters, and the way they intermingle or have to make really hard decisions is pretty intense. The art direction we also have throughout this book, from illustrators like Jerome Apena, Assad Ribic, and more. It just has a unique style as well. There's kind of a moodiness to this book. The coloring is just really fascinating in its way. I think it feels very set apart from a lot of mainstream Marvel books, if I'm honest with you, and I mean that again in a very complimentary sense. This is not too dissimilar from some of the indie Rick Remender stuff I've seen around, and again, it's just really striking. I have never read a Marvel run quite like this, and it's a really, really fun team book. I think that the team itself is absolutely essential to the storytelling. This is a very character-driven run, and I just love the characters that Remender chose to just kind of fill the team. I think it's really interesting, and honestly, the character dynamics alone leave me so just immersed in this world he's spinning out. This is again a very celebrated and memorable run for so many people. This omnibus was out of print for so long. Like I said, it just got reprinted this year at the time of the recording, 2024, and I've been hoping to read it all this time, and here we are, and I am elated. And honestly, this book is even better than advertised, and that's really saying something. When I think of a great team book recently, this is really high on the list, and one I just couldn't wait to showcase in today's video. Do yourself a favor, please don't miss out on Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender. Okay, and that's been 5 great Team Marvel Comics Omnibus editions. Yes, that's a bit of a mouthful. Hopefully my next list video will be a little bit more streamlined as far as the prompt title goes. But yeah, these are team books that I really wanted to showcase that just happen to be in that omnibus format. There are so many other great ones out there. I can think of X-Men and Fantastic Four alone just have so many books that I could have filled this list with easily. But I tried to go some that were just maybe not our main teams. You know, I did do a Fantastic Four and an Avengers book and one X-Men, but I tried to find some of the spin-off team books as well. But making a list like this, I just know there are so many other great Marvel runs out there that have a team dynamic that I haven't explored in the list. And that's where I'm hoping you can come in. If you're still watching, would you go ahead and comment what are some of your favorite Marvel team books? Let me know that in the comments below. I'd love to talk to all of you, but I'd also love the comments to just be a rich reservoir for great recommendations from people that are just stopping by to get some good book recommendations. I love reading this stuff, and hopefully if you're watching this, you do too. But yeah, let me know about that in the comments or any other questions you have for me. Thank you so much for watching. This one was an absolute blast to put together. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, comment, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thank you so much. Have a good one.